From victim to guardian of the family, I faced betrayal, lies, and discovered something that shocked everyone. I never thought my life could change so quickly. Everything seemed relatively normal before the whirlwind began. I was just Elisa, a teenager trying to balance school, friends, and the small family dramas that at that point seemed trivial. My mother had left us years before, and my father, Hugo, had always been protective, but the loss of my mother had intensified something in him that I only understood later, a constant fear of losing us. We lived an almost mechanical routine, between silent dinners and short conversations about daily life. I helped my father as much as I could, trying to be the daughter he needed to ease the emptiness, but I felt something was always lingering in the air. My sisters, Bruna and Camilla, were completely different from each other. Bruna dramatized every detail and seemed to follow every impulse of our absent mother, Regina, while Camilla tried to maintain a balance but was constantly pressured from all sides. Deep down, I felt an urgent need to protect the family, to maintain a fragile peace that seemed about to shatter. Until then, I didn't know that my life was about to be turned upside down by manipulation, intrigue, and accusations that we couldn't have foreseen. It was on one of those seemingly ordinary days that I realized the true weight of the situation. Sam, my closest friend and almost part of my family, was wrongly accused by Daniela, our obsessive relative, of things that simply didn't make sense. I felt a mixture of anger, frustration, and helplessness, because I knew he was loyal, upright, and a true friend. My heart sank every time I saw my father try to mediate the situation, trying to remain calm, while I watched the tension grow around me. Rita, my father's partner, struggled to provide us with stability, but it was impossible to ignore the venom that Regina and Bruna constantly poured on us. Every phone call, every unexpected visit, every snide comment seemed to slowly erode the peace we had built. I began to realize that my teenage life was becoming a battlefield, where I needed to act, but I didn't yet know how. I wanted to help, but I felt my strength was limited, that my decisions could cause even more chaos. The simple act of breathing deeply took effort, as the family tension began to consume me. The conflicts with my absent mother, Regina, intensified. She had a cruel talent for manipulating situations and pitting Bruna against me or my father. Every family gathering was a test of patience and emotional resilience. I remember one afternoon when I tried to explain to Bruna that the accusations about Sam were false, but she looked at me with those angry eyes and followed Regina's script. I felt a deep sadness, because it was my own sister becoming an accomplice in something I saw as unfair and painful. It was at that moment that I began to understand that protecting my family meant more than solving external problems. It meant facing my own limits, my own insecurities, and the feeling of loneliness that was growing within me. I began to feel responsible not only for the care of our home, but also for everyone's emotional sanity, a burden that seemed too heavy for someone my age. The tension didn't just come from the arguments, it came from the constant feeling of surveillance, that any slip-up could be used against us, especially against Sam and, eventually, against Matt, my boyfriend, who also got involved trying to help. The impact this had on me was enormous. I began to struggle to concentrate on my studies, conversations with friends, and even the simplest moments of daily life. It was as if a dark cloud constantly hung over us, and I had to walk through it, trying to protect everyone without losing my own identity. Hugo, my father, even though he tried to protect us, often seemed lost, torn between the fear of losing his family and the desire to move on with Rita. I, Elisa, felt the need to assume the role of mediator, a firm voice reminding everyone of the truth. But at the same time, I was learning the hard way how to deal with family intrigues and betrayals. Every step was an internal battle. I wanted to maintain harmony, but I also needed to assert myself, to show that I could not be manipulated or intimidated. The emotional pressure grew with each passing day, and I felt the weight of every look, every nasty comment, every family crisis. I began to realize that I was growing up too fast, that the adolescence I imagined was being consumed by a whirlwind of responsibilities and emotions that forced me to mature prematurely. And then came the day when everything seemed to explode. Sam was wrongly accused in front of the entire family, with Daniela and her siblings silently supporting his lies. Hugo was furious but tried to remain calm. Bruna was by Regina's side, as always, and Camilla seemed lost, unsure of where to stand. I felt a Mixture of anger, helplessness, and despair, knowing the situation was spiraling out of control. That was the first time I felt I could no longer just watch or try to appease. Something had to be done. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking, and a chill ran down my spine. I was afraid to speak out, to say too much, or to make a mistake, but at the same time, I knew I had to act. It was at that moment that I realized that overcoming grief wasn't about avoiding conflict or running away from pain, but about facing it head-on, even when all seemed lost. I needed to find strength within myself that I didn't even know existed, because protecting Sam, my father, my sisters, and in the future, Sophia, our adopted baby, would become my greatest purpose. From that day on, every moment at home felt charged with an almost unbearable tension. I would wake up and already feel the weight of every look, every misplaced word. My mind wouldn't rest. I imagined strategies to protect Sam from unfair accusations, calm my father who was struggling with his own anxiety, and still try to contain the destructive influence of Regina and Bruna. It all felt like a daily battle, and I wondered how someone so young could handle such enormous responsibilities. Rita tried to help me, offering advice and emotional support, but not even her presence was enough to erase the feeling that we were surrounded by a constant cloud of conflict. Life felt like a game of chess, where every move needed to be calculated, yet at the same time, any mistake could cause irreversible disaster. I felt like I was carrying more than just my own life. I was carrying the need to protect the entire family unit. Camilla began to withdraw emotionally, likely trying to shield herself from the intensity of the conflicts. Bruna, on the other hand, seemed increasingly aligned with Regina, repeating her arguments without question. It was painful to realize that my own sister was being used as an instrument of manipulation, and at the same time, I knew I couldn't waste time trying to convince her or change her position. I needed to focus on what was truly urgent: keeping Sam safe, preserving my father's relationship with Rita, and ensuring the chaos didn't spread to the new generation we were building with Matt. Each night, when I finally lay down, my body felt exhausted, but my mind remained alert, imagining solutions, anticipating problems. The feeling that I was constantly in combat began to affect my sleep, my mood, and even my physical health. Regina's attacks weren't just verbal. They were subtle, manipulative, and sometimes almost imperceptible. She knew exactly which points to touch to provoke distrust, anger, or insecurity. I found myself replaying conversations in my mind, trying to understand every detail, trying to predict her next move. The feeling of constant alert began to wear me down emotionally, but it also awakened something new, an inner strength I didn't even know I possessed. Every injustice I saw Sam suffer, every malicious word that hurt my father, left me feeling a mixture of rage and determination. I couldn't control Regina or Bruna, but I could choose how to react, and that choice began to define who I truly was. I began to realize that overcoming obstacles began the moment I accepted that I couldn't change everyone else, but I could change myself. There were times when I considered giving up. The emotional pressure was so great that feeling fragile seemed inevitable. I cried alone in my room, feeling unable to bear all the responsibility. But whenever I looked at Matt, Sam, or even my father trying to remain calm, I felt a spark of courage. That spark became a guiding light on dark days, reminding me that my strength didn't need to be overwhelming, but constant. It was during this time that I began writing, as a way to organize my thoughts and emotions. Recording everything helped me notice patterns, understand my own reactions, and, most importantly, find more effective strategies for dealing with family conflicts. The turning point began quietly. One day, during a particularly intense argument between Bruna, Regina, and Sam, something shifted within me. Instead of simply listening and trying to mediate, I spoke clearly and firmly, stating the facts, defending the truth, and setting boundaries. The feeling of fear didn't disappear, but I felt for the first time that I had power over my own actions, that my voice could make a difference. It wasn't about shouting louder or winning an argument. It was about acting coherently, with integrity, and with courage. This moment, though simple, marked the beginning of an internal transformation that would be fundamental to the process of overcoming that I was still experiencing. I realized that facing conflicts head-on, with clarity and determination, was more effective than any attempt to avoid or minimize the problems. The tension at home reached an almost unbearable point. Every word exchanged seemed to carry an explosive charge, and I felt like any false move could trigger another conflict. Regina intensified her attempts to manipulate the situation, while Bruna followed her lead without question, and Camila remained silent, as if unwilling to get involved, but I knew her silence also weighed heavily. Sam continued to be wrongly accused, and I saw how his patience and integrity were tested daily. My father, Hugo, tried to protect everyone, but his fear and anxiety were palpable, and this put even more pressure on me. I knew I needed to act with greater strategy, clarity, and courage, because everyone's emotional fragility depended in part on my own stability. I spent days planning, reflecting, and searching for ways to protect our family without giving in to Regina's provocations. I began recording every conversation, every attack, every detail that could prove the truth and disarm the unfounded accusations against Sam. It was a huge effort, because it required constant attention, memory, and emotional control. At the same time, I had to deal with my own internal doubts. Am I doing enough? Can I really change the situation? Each question tested me, but also taught me something about patience, resilience, and the importance of believing in yourself even when all seems lost. I felt like I was growing, but in a painful way that forced maturity before its time. My relationship with Matt became a fundamental support. He was always by my side, offering advice, security, and unconditional love. His presence reminded me that I didn't have to carry everything alone, and that sharing responsibility wasn't weakness, but strength. With him, I was able to structure clearer plans, face difficult conversations, and deal with Regina and Bruna's manipulation more objectively. Sophia, our adopted baby, still small, gave me an extra reason to persevere. Her every smile, every innocent gesture, reinforced my commitment to keeping the family together, safe, and happy. I realized that overcoming was not just a battle against others, but a struggle to keep my own faith, courage, and love alive, even amidst the chaos. There were times when I thought all was lost. One afternoon, after a particularly vicious argument with Regina, my body and mind felt exhausted, and I almost gave up fighting. But in that moment, looking at Sam and remembering everything we'd been through together, I realized that giving up wasn't an option. Strength didn't come from external miracles, but from the conviction that our family needed me, that my actions made a difference, and that truth and love would always find a way to prevail, even when it seemed impossible. That moment of near despair became a decisive turning point, showing me that overcoming requires persistence and courage, even when fear dominates. From that moment on, I began to act with more confidence. I confronted Regina directly, exposing her manipulations and presenting evidence that disproved her accusations. Bruna finally began to question her mother, and Camilla, who had previously been hesitant, sided with us, offering emotional support and practicality. My father, Hugo, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that our family was beginning to mend its course, and Rita continued to be the anchor of stability she had always been. Sam, strengthened by my advocacy and the truth, regained his confidence and began to live without the burden of unfair accusations. I realized that my journey of overcoming was intimately linked to the ability to act with integrity, courage, and love, facing chaos without losing the essence of who I am. After confronting Regina and dealing with Bruna's manipulations, I felt a slight sense of freedom. It wasn't complete, as there were still open wounds and remnants of mistrust, but I finally realized we were beginning to breathe without the constant tension we'd felt before. Camilla became more present, offering support and stability, and even Bruna began to reflect on her own actions, realizing she didn't need to blindly follow in the footsteps of our absent mother. Hugo, my father, seemed more serene, as if a cloud had begun to lift. Rita remained a pillar of love and calm, helping to remind us that life can be rebuilt even after so much chaos. I, Elisa, realized that my actions, my determination, and my love for my family had made a difference, and this gave me a sense of fulfillment I'd never experienced before. Sam started smiling more often again, and her presence once again became a relief amid the tensions that still occasionally surfaced. I understood that overcoming doesn't mean the total absence of problems, but rather the ability to face them with courage and clarity. Matt remained by my side, always patient, offering advice and reminding me that sharing responsibilities doesn't diminish our strength, but rather strengthens our bonds. With Sophia, our adopted baby, life seemed lighter. Her every gesture brought hope and reminded us of the genuine love that was still possible to build, even after years of conflict and pain. Her presence became a symbol of what we had achieved, a new generation that united us and motivated us to move forward. In those quiet moments, I began to reflect on everything we had been through. It was impossible not to remember the nights I felt like giving up, the tears hidden in my room, the physical and emotional exhaustion. But each of these moments taught me something about resilience, courage, and the importance of maintaining integrity in the face of injustice. I realized that overcoming adversity is not an endpoint, but a continuous process of learning and growth. My life had changed profoundly, and I was more aware of my own strengths and limitations. I learned to trust myself more, to act firmly, and to not allow manipulation and negativity to divert me from my principles and the protection of my family. Hugo finally began to make room for himself, allowing himself to experience a new love with Rita without guilt or fear. It was a learning experience for all of us, understanding that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting or betraying the past, but integrating past experiences and transforming pain into learning. Camilla began to demonstrate her own strength, learning to set boundaries and position herself in difficult situations. Bruna slowly began a process of reflection and change, even though it was still in its early stages. I realized that each family member had their own journey of overcoming grief, and that my role wasn't to solve every problem, but to support and protect, offering love, clarity, and stability. In everyday life, small gestures began to bring joy again. Family dinners, unexpected laughter, sincere conversations, and moments of complicity with Matt and Sam became points of emotional balance. Sophia, with her innocence and pure love, reminded us daily of the importance of continuing to fight, investing in family unity, and believing that overcoming is possible, even after the most difficult times. I, Elisa, felt a profound transformation. Not only had I overcome the immediate challenges, but I was learning to build a life with greater awareness, empathy, and courage. Each step we took together strengthened our bonds and allowed us to face the future with hope and determination. Over time, I realized that the tension that once seemed unbearable had eased. Regina still existed in our lives, but her manipulative power no longer had the same effect. I, Elisa, had learned to set clear boundaries, act firmly, and protect those I loved without losing myself in the process. Hugo allowed himself to live, laugh, and love again alongside Rita without guilt, and this brought lightness to all of us. Camilla found her own voice and began to face difficult situations with poise, while Bruna began to question old patterns, albeit slowly. Sam finally breathed a sigh of relief and rebuilt his life, without the weight of unfair accusations. Matt became an even more present partner, helping maintain the family's emotional stability and offering unconditional love. Sophia, our adopted baby, became the symbol of hope and unity that kept us strong during the most difficult times. Her every smile, every innocent gesture, reinforced that it was worth fighting, persisting, and overcoming. I realized that our family didn't need to be perfect to be strong. We just needed to support each other, believe in each other, and protect what truly mattered. My role as a mediator and caregiver had matured me in ways I never imagined, and now I understood that overcoming is a daily process, made up of small victories, quiet courage, and genuine love. The rebuilding process also taught me something valuable about forgiveness and boundaries. It wasn't about forgetting past mistakes or allowing injustices to continue, but rather about choosing where to invest our energy and how to preserve our peace. I learned to value my own voice, to trust my decisions, and to understand that not all conflicts need to be overcome through confrontation. Sometimes, strength lies in remaining calm and acting with clarity. Each challenge we faced brought us closer, strengthened us, and taught us the importance of protecting our own happiness without sacrificing our love for our family. Today, looking back, I see how much we've grown. Life still presents obstacles, but the constant feeling of fear has given way to a solid confidence in ourselves and our ability to overcome them. Hugo and Rita built a partnership based on respect and affection. Camilla and Bruna found ways to cope with their own weaknesses, and Sam and Matt became pillars of support and love. Sophia continues to remind us daily of the preciousness of building a home based on security, love, and hope. Every small gesture, every achievement, represents the victory of a family that has endured intense conflict and yet found ways to rebuild. In the end, I learned that overcoming is not a point of arrival, but a continuous journey. It's about rising even when pain insists on knocking us down, about protecting those we love without losing our true essence, and about believing that, even amidst the greatest difficulties, it's possible to find happiness, balance, and genuine love. Today, I am Elisa, a stronger young woman, aware of my choices and capable of facing life's challenges with courage. I've learned to value every victory, no matter how small, and to understand that overcoming doesn't mean forgetting, but transforming. Our family has found its balance, and I finally understood that true strength lies in the resilience and love that holds us together.